everybody. I wanted to make a quick video to kind of go over what my opinion is on a boxed frame or a fully boxed frame versus a semi-boxed frame where you have a front portion that's boxed and then the rear portion that's open C-channel, such as the Ram and General Motors trucks versus the Ford Super Duty. Of course, most people know that Ford is going to be moving to a fully boxed frame with through welding on the cross members in 2017, and they've been running fully boxed frame on their light duty trucks, the F-150, for probably before anybody else was, because that was a big advertising point for them. But what I wanted to point out was I think it's actually a mistake that Ford's going to a fully boxed frame on their Super Duty lineup. They had the intention of running a C-channel frame because it allows for some flex, and I'll kind of tell you why. If you read the forums, you can quickly understand that the C-channel frame is a much thicker gauge steel on the Super Duty in the current generation than either the Ram or the General Motors products. It's actually a little more than a 1/4 inch thick versus roughly an 1/8 inch thick frame on both the Ram product and a slightly thicker frame on the General Motors product, though being fully boxed. Well, if you do a little bit of research on open C-channel frames, you'll find out that most of your Class 8 trucks, your semi trucks, all use open C-channel frames. Sometimes General Motors or Ram fans like to say that Ford uses an open C-channel frame purely for upfitters, folks who are going to put flat beds or utility beds on the back of their trucks. But that's not necessarily accurate. Though it is an easier platform to install on, the main reason why Ford uses this platform is because of the increased load capacity that you're going to generally haul with a heavy-duty truck, or at least a Class 3 single or dual rear-wheel pickup truck. And this is what I mean by that. When you have a fully boxed frame, such as in the Ram product here or General Motors product, it's a very, very rigid frame, which means that the cross members and the frame rails are essentially welded together to make one very rigid, solid platform. And, a really good way of thinking about that would be, let's say, like a cereal box, a box that has 4 sides to it, and if you twist a cereal box, it doesn't necessarily twist that easy, but it will start to crumple when you excessively twist it, versus something like a Super Duty frame, which has an open C channel. Well, the open C channel does allow for flexing, and Ford engineers have always been outright and forward with their design, saying that it's engineered to provide some twist. Now, if you're going to try to open your tailgate when you get into a situation like this, it may prevent you from doing that because, of course, your frame and your tailgate has a little bit of a twist or articulation to it. Where this really matters is when you start putting a lot of weight in the back of your truck. Let me give you a good example. This twist ramp that they have the trucks on is pretty excessive. The likelihood that your front tire, your front driver's side tire and your rear passenger side tire will be at such odd angles from each other, which by the picture, they're roughly 40 inches of separation. If you consider the ramps are about 20 inches tall, that's very unlikely that you would stop in that situation and feel the need to open up your tailgate. But consider this. Let's say you're hauling a gooseneck trailer and you have, 4, 5, 6,000 pounds of weight over the back pin of your truck. If you put weight down on a boxed frame like this, and you put a tremendous amount of weight in the back, all of the stress of that pin weight is going to be centered across the welds of your frame. And what will end up happening is your axle shackles that actually hold the leaf springs in place on this side, or even on the other side, are likely to have that stress transferred to them. So the shackles themselves will then be the stress point of all that weight coming down. That doesn't properly distribute the weight across the axle, the tires, as well as the suspension and the frame, because all of that weight is being focused on some of the suspension components being maximally stressed out because of the rigidity of the frame. versus like a Super Duty. If you load, roughly 5,000, 6,000 pounds of weight in the back of this truck while it's on an uneven ground like that, while it's on an uneven ground, the tires are actually going to make contact with the ground. Actually, not just the tires, but the frame itself will start to articulate and flex as well. And when that happens, you're actually transferring and dispersing the weight of the pin across not just the hitch, but the frame, the suspension, the axles, and the tires as well, and not just locating it specifically on certain weld points of your frame and your shackles. So, in a realistic scenario where you might find yourself towing a heavy gooseneck trailer, fifth wheel, or something else, or just have a lot of weight in the back, cement, timbers, whatever you might load, if you don't have that frame flex, like a Ram or a General Motors product, you're taking a much higher likelihood that you're going to actually damage the suspension component, a hanger, a leaf spring, or even do damage to the frame welds on your box channels. Now, if you bend a boxed section of a truck, what will happen is you're not going to get like a C-channel section, which will flex and then bend back. On a boxed section, it's going to crumple. You're going to have sections of frame that actually cave in on themselves under that excessive weight. And that can cause very severe, if not irreparable, frame damage to the truck if it's very severe. So imagine yourselves when you're using a truck like these. Do you really want such a stiff or rigid frame that the frame itself has the likelihood of getting damaged, which is a very difficult to repair section, versus having an open C-channel frame that gives you the ability to have the frame articulate slightly with the weight in the back? So I just wanted to make a video to kind of point that out. I think that Ford, I'm not going to say they're making a mistake of going to a fully boxed frame, but if you ever, drive behind, say, like a Class 8 semi-truck when it's not loaded and it's just the tractor, you'll notice even when it accelerates, there's some frame flex there. And one of the reasons, again, why there's frame flex and why they use open C channels on big rigs and semi-trucks is because they understand that if you go over uneven terrain or if you go over certain scenarios, the torque produced by the truck, as well as that uneven scenario and the pin weight on the back of the truck, if you're hauling something, can really hold the back end down, and you want the truck to be able to flex slightly, especially over uneven terrain, so you disperse the weight across the axle, the tires, and the suspension evenly versus just over the frame of the truck and, again, maybe your shackles or your shocks even. So in a scenario like this or a test like this, I think this is a very poor way of judging the performance of a truck. Again, they copied General Motors with this test, and it makes a lot of sense if you're trying to say, just compare the rigidity of a boxed frame versus an open C-channel frame. But when it comes down to the actual practical application of both designs, I would much rather prefer an open C-channel over a fully boxed. And if you look from purely an expense perspective, the metal that's used in a Super Duty truck is roughly the same thickness as the metal that's used on a Class 8 semi-truck. It's over 1/4 inch thick. And they fully box that portion up front from essentially from the cab forward. So, and they box that with 1/4 inch thick steel. So it's not an expense thing. Ford definitely, puts the money into the engineering of their frame design. They just understand that if you're buying a 3/4 ton or 1 ton truck, you're probably buying it because you're going to be towing heavy. I hope this helps some people. If you have any comments, please leave them below. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you.